Well, the last thing that I write usually in my paper is the introduction. I usually go by the material, methods, results, and a little part of the discussion to put the main ideas. Then I go back to the introduction, because what I have put in the article is defining what I will need in the introduction, and then I finish the discussion to be more sharp and trying to have a kind of equilibrium between all the parts.
Write the results first. So you write the results, you put up the figures, and then you will move on to both the introduction and the discussion. But make sure you organize the results for a clear, logical order, and the figure will subsequently flow themselves.
It depends on what type of article you want to write, because articles can be experimental or just review. But for experimental, of course, you always begin with the literature search, and then you, personally, I start with methods and materials section, because you have performed everything in the laboratory, and then you just convert that into writing part.
It's important, if you write an article, that you have a good overview of what you want to do with the study and what your results are. So what I usually do is present the results that you want to put in the article in a meeting, so you can discuss it. And if you have an idea of the aim of the study and what kind of results you want to show, it is easier to write your article around. So yeah, if you summarize your results and then starting writing your introduction, material methods always the easiest part, because you did that already. Then you write down your results, and in the end, you discuss your results.
Yeah, I don't know I have tips, but I can say how I do it. So let's say you write an introduction to your article, right? I mostly write my introduction after I gathered results. That doesn't mean I haven't read anything, but really writing the introduction, I do that after results. And what I do, like, I know a little bit what are the main studies that are related to my study. I read those studies, I copy-paste, literally copy-paste important sentences or conclusions or ideas out of that paper, copy-paste them into my introduction paper, and then I got like maybe 100 copy-paste lines, and then I start ordering them. I'm gonna put them in paragraphs. Well, and there's a certain tradition in how you segment introduction, you know, like you start with some demographics, and then you start with the problem, and you finally end with a hypothesis, right? And you present your study. So that's how I then order all these ideas. And then I simply rewrite those ideas. So I have this like Frankenstein of an introduction with all these different kinds of mismatching lines. And then I just try to like rewrite them in my own words, how I see them. And some lines go away, I delete them, they're like, no, whatever. Some lines I pretty much just copy, letter by letter, I just change words, or I crop it up a bit, I make it smaller, that's all I do. And I put a reference in there, of course, you know? Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's a little bit my way on how to do the writing. I do that for the discussion as well. Methods, I would say methods is the most boring part, because that is just, this is what I did. Yeah. And results are a more complex thing. I don't really have a way for that.
Okay.
But I always start with the graphs and tables first, and then I write about that, because I find that easier. So that's the only thing I can say about how I do it.
Okay, for that, I'm not sure whether everyone is a big fan of wines and beers, but if you are, just take your results. Find someone who is able to understand what you're doing, but is not really into the field, but who has an eager and curious mind. Have this bottle of wine, 2 glasses, and just have the discussion about it. So first of all, you have to try to explain to someone else what you are really doing and what exactly you have found. And you will most likely experience that the other person has many questions along the line, even for understanding what you're doing, and has many questions on the implications. And I typically find that those questions are already telling you what the most important parts of your findings are, what the most important implications are. And I just do this with colleagues, with friends, with family, and as soon as you had some nice evenings, you will have a notebook full of good discussion points already.
Okay, so you'd say discuss it with a lot of people?
Yeah.
Okay.
And obviously you will have your thoughts about the analyses along the way, and you will note them on the notebook.
Okay.
How I start with the discussion, I always follow the paragraphs. So for me, it's the reverse of the introduction. And then I just, the same way I placed results, and then I discuss result in the discussion. I discuss the results the way they were presented in results section. And it's also in connection to introduction. Okay. So that's how I always start. But how I end, well, it depends. So it's still not perfect.
So you mean like, how do you write your introduction then?
From the most important part to the most specific part.
And then you
and then the discussion is from the most specific part to the most general part.
Oh, so it was like the...
Yes.
Okay. And in the discussion, when you discuss each results in the sense that you, in the order you wrote them in the result section.
Yes, and usually, well, every research is different, so then you cannot write discussion in the same way. But for example, if I have paragraphs in results, you have subsections. So for example, in results section, you have 4 subsections, and then I discuss them in the very same order as it was mentioned in results section.
Yeah, discussion is the most toughest and important part of the paper. The one thing that I learned that is extremely important to know is your discussion should only have papers referenced to what you have done in the paper itself. So with the results that you have to base the results with the papers that have close link with these results and not anything else. If you haven't done an experiment, and you cannot quote another paper with that experiment that you haven't done. And that's something that most students make a mistake just because they can justify a paragraph or a statement in discussion, but you cannot do that if you haven't done the experiment.
Okay, so you would say don't speak about what you did not do.
Exactly. Speak about what you did and base that on existing literature that relate to what you did. Okay. You should not write in discussion the things that you haven't done just because it fits the article.
Yeah.
And do you have sometimes like blogs, or you feel like you cannot write anymore?
Of course I do. I think that everybody does. And there is no recipe for that. You can go for a walk, you can start doing something else. Well, we are not writing a novel, so this is also something different. So we should be focused to at least summarize what we want to write. But what I usually do is I make a draft in with very simple sentences. Whatever comes to my mind, I just write this down. And then I'm trying to make the head and tail, like to rewrite this in a nicer manner. But I just try to keep on writing whatever I would like to say. So if I'm not focused enough to write a nice sentence, then at least I will make a structure, or I will add some comments on what I would like to discuss, or at least add references which I would like to discuss.
Okay, so at the beginning you just write, so you put everything which is in your mind, you put it on the paper.
But it's structured. So I have, so for example, like number 1, which is related to the first paragraph of the results, and then I usually start from points. So it's like what I want to discuss in this paragraph. So, for example, this and this results, then to which research should I refer to when comparing, and then like some general summary of this paragraph, and then again. So I usually start with points.
Okay. And then you add sentences in the points?
Yes, and then
you write it better.
Yes, and then when it finally makes sense, then I write this as sentences. Well, I just wanted to say that it's also not an option to staring at the blank page on your computer. Like, it's always better to at least make some notes, whatever is in your mind, and come back to that later. But the beginning is always difficult. Mm-hmm. So I would just keep on writing.
So you'd say like to move from the blank page is to start writing?
Yes.
Even if it's
even if it's not a good English, or even if it's not structured nicely, just make some notes, write some summary, add some references which will be important. And also, what I think is important, that you are writing the manuscript, so you know what's going on, you know what you wanted to say. But it's not always the case. So if you give the same manuscript to somebody else, it may not be clear. So it's also important to ask other co-authors to give a feedback on how clear the manuscript is, because that's the most important part, if the message is clear. So if the reader knows what you wanted to, what the research is about.
Okay. So you would say, like, don't hesitate to send it to people to get input.
No, definitely.
Okay. Next question is about the literature.